Golair, and welcome to the Loaf of Bread GAA podcast, slicing into the GAA of the past, present and future. Join me, Jason Keelan, as we cut into the largest loaf of bread known to mankind.
Hello, Diegwich, bonjour, ni hao, konnichiwa, guten tag and privyet to you all wherever you're listening in. What started as a message to 10 clubs has now expanded to more than 50 clubs globally from all continents. The journey through Loaf 2 GAA Global continues this week as we move on to our next destination in the GAA world. So come with me on the GAA journey of a lifetime and meet clubs from Canada to Argentina, South Africa to Gibraltar, Bermuda to the North Pole, New Zealand to Kuwait, Knoxville to Qatar, and literally everywhere in between. So grab the passports, grab the bags, it's time to go.
On Slice 27, I travel from the paradise of Bermuda to the south of the USA and the state of Texas. Here I meet Ali from Dallas and Eddie from Athleague in County Roscommon to chat all about Dallas Fionn MacCumhaill GAA. We chat the rows of Tralee links, the naming of Fionn MacCumhaill and the website story, NBA Hall of Famer Ronald Blackman's son on the team, the Alamo and the Irish, Bernard Flynn, Desi Farrell, DJ Carey and Michael Dinan all playing with Dallas, Railway Cups in Dallas, the Rossies nickname, the Joe McDonough story, the amazing Dallas St. Patrick's Day parade, Ali's career at Boston, and having a midfield of 6'8" and 6'7". That and much more as we find out all about Dallas GAA. But first, as usual, let's take a trip through the city of Dallas and find out what this amazing place has to offer. Bon Sultas. Today we fly from Hamilton and Wade International Airport across the southern US to the Lone Star State of Texas and the city of Dallas. Texas is the Lone Star State as it was once its own republic, having separated from Mexico in 1836. The Lone Star on the flag shows their independent spirit. Texas is just slightly smaller than the northwest state of Alaska in terms of land size, but is more than 60 times the population. It's also more than 8 times the size of Ireland. It also has an economy similar to that of India. Yes, the 1.2 billion population country of India. Everything really is bigger in Texas. Dallas is the 9th biggest city in the US, but is still smaller than state mates Houston and San Antonio. Modern, historical Dallas was part of an era called New Spain, belonging to the Spanish colonists in the area at the time. It was in 1821 when Mexico split from Spanish rule that they declared Texas as part of their own Quahia Itias. 15 years later, the Texan people declared their own freedom from Mexico. The name Dallas has too many theories to go into, but most revolve around various people with that surname at the time. In 1845, Texas became the 28th state of the US, passing their vote by just a margin of 1. Railroad construction helped Dallas hugely, and it became a booming centre for construction and production in America. During World War II, the Ford plant was located in the area and produced vast amount of transports for the US Army in their quest. Previous to these times, the area was, as you might expect, an agricultural stronghold, with many Native American routes passing through the area also. Modern day Dallas is often referred to as the Silicon Prairie or Telecom Corridor, as more than 5,500 companies in the sector reside in the city. Names such as T-Mobile, AT&T, Nokia and Verizon are synonymous with the area, while JCPenney and American Airlines also call Dallas Fort Worth region home. Texas is famous in history for many events, and perhaps 2 are more familiar than others. Firstly, in 1836, during the Texas Revolution, about 200 Texan volunteers under the command of William B. Travis and Jim Bowie decided to occupy the fort and defend San Antonio against the Mexican army. Among the volunteers is the former US Congressman from Tennessee, Davy Crockett. Leading a greatly superior force, General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna surrounded the fort of Alamo and laid siege to it for 13 days. On February 23, 1836, the second day of the siege, a volunteer smuggled out a heroic letter from Travis calling for help from the people of Texas and all Americans, and concluding with the stirring words, "I shall never surrender or retreat. I call on you in the name of liberty, of patriotism, and everything dear to the American character, to come to our aid with all dispatch. Incredibly, 15 of those who died in the Alamo were Irish, and today one of the 7 flags at the Alamo Memorial is the Irish tricolour. At the time, Irish white immigrants made up the largest minority in the USA. Men like Sam Houston, an American with a grandfather from Antrim, fought to death to defend their territory. The cries of "Remember the Alamo" followed every shot, but the Mexicans didn't understand. The Alamo itself, a 3-acre site, was converted to a military site 70 years previous by the Spanish governor of the area at the time, a Dubliner named Hugo O'Connor. Clinton O'Neill, an Irish descendant, fired the first shot. Derryman Robert Evans was the Alamo ordnance man. Others with names like Nolan, O'Neill, Carey, Jameson, Ryan, McGee and Burns all held their Irish fighting spirit to the end. Before the siege, they were joined by a man, as I mentioned, named Davy Crockett, a leader now famous in US history, whose father John was Irish. Today, Alamo is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And if you go to Enniscorthy in Wexford, you might find the Alamo Hotel. Why? Because many killed in fighting were from the sunny southeast county, including John Power from Ballygarrett. Sadly, the second event that Dallas is known for also has a huge Wexford link.
Shots were fired as President Kennedy's motorcade passed through downtown Dallas. The crowd screamed and lay down on the grass. As the motorcade went by, it was not known if the shots were aimed at the president. Repeat, it is not known if the shots were aimed at the president.
Here is a flash from the Associated Press, Dateline Dallas. 2 priests who were with President Kennedy say he is dead of bullet wounds.
On November 22nd, 1963, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy was assassinated as he drove in his motorcade through Dealey Plaza in Dallas. Beside him, his wife Jackie. In front, Governor Connolly, who was also hit, and his wife. Despite best efforts, Kennedy died in the nearby Presbyterian Hospital, to the devastation of a nation and the world. Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested for his murder, a series of sniper shots from the upper stories of the Texas Book Depository. Oswald was due to be tried for the murder of Kennedy, and also of an officer, J.D. Tippit, killed during his running away attempt. As Oswald emerged in handcuffs to the media the following day, he was himself murdered by businessman Jack Ruby. Even today, the theories surrounding the entire event are endless. What isn't disputed is that the US lost its 35th president. Today, if you go to Dunganstown, County Wexford, you will find the Kennedy homestead, where President Kennedy visited not long before his death. Here, he met with relatives, drank tea, ate sandwiches, and mixed with the locals on the country farmyard, something the most powerful human in the world rarely gets to do. That visit in June '63 changed Ireland and inspired a positive attitude. Personally, my own links to Kennedy are evident, as my grandaunt Sheila Mullally was part of the design company who produced clothing for the family. One of my favourite possessions is the photo of her on the White House steps, photographing Kennedy as he meets and greets. As for famous names, Dallas isn't short of a strong list. Singers Michael Lee Aday, better known as Meat Loaf, Vanilla Ice, Polyphonic Spree, who you hear in the background, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Mara Morris, Norah Jones, Usher, Selena Gomez, Kelly Clarkson and Willie Nelson, Friday Night Lights actor Jesse Plemons, golfer Jordan Spieth, philanthropist Melinda Gates, and Morgan Fairchild, better known to some as Chandler's mom Nora Bing in Friends. On the sporting side, Dallas is home to several big-name teams. In the NFL, the world's most valuable team in any sport is the Arlington-based Dallas Cowboys, winner of 5 Super Bowl titles since their foundation in 1960. They boast players in their history such as Troy Aikman, Tony Romo, Tyrell Owens, and Roger Staubach. In the NBA, the Dallas Mavericks are the trailblazers on court, with a remarkable playoff appearance record this century, while the Dallas Wings are the women's NBA team of the area. The Texas Rangers are the baseball stars out of the newly designed Globe Life Field Stadium, while the NHL team Dallas Stars won the Stanley Cup in 1999. FC Dallas await their first ever MLS title in soccer. As for Dallas GAA, I'll let our guest tell you more about it. But before we meet Ali and Eddie, there's one last thing that we have to mention. I love the Irish wearing a Father Ted t-shirt with the words "I shot JR" plastered on it. Of course, JR, for those who don't know, is the great man J.R. Ewing from the iconic TV show Dallas. Played by the actor Larry Hagman, the show itself ran from 1978 to 1991, where he played scheming oil tycoon John Ross Ewing of the oil-rich family, during the show's portrayal of his brother Bobby's marriage to Pam Barnes, the daughter of the rival family to the Ewings. The famous Who Shot JR episode remains one of the most watched of any TV show in history, second only to the finale of The Great MASH in 1983. By the way, Kristen Shepherd, his sister-in-law, and woman he was riding on the side, shot him. And so it is to the GAA scene, where it's time to meet the amazing Ali D'Amico and Roscommon legend Eddie Geraghty, as we hear all about the crack in Dallas GAA. Hey Eddie.
Hey, how are you?
I'm not so bad, how are things?
Not too bad. How's things?
Yeah, sure, alright, yeah. How's all out in Dallas?
Oh, all is good. It's like good Irish weather here today. It's raining.
Jeez, it's like good non-Irish weather here today. It's 23 degrees, so
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Where are you based, Jason?
Mullingar.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I lived in Mullingar for 4 years back in the day.
Oh Jesus, what brought you here, or where are you from originally? Or
So I'm an accountant. I trained as an accountant in this firm, one of the biggest firms in Mullingar. It's like Kinnearing Company. They were Grant Thornton back in the day.
okay.
So
What year was that? Or
yeah, probably gonna date myself here. It was between 92 and 96.
okay. I was a bit young for remembering
You
too
were,
much
yeah.
back then. But yeah,
Basically, you know where Westmead Motors is?
yeah. I used to live in Bellevue Terrace, across the road from Millie's. You probably know Millie, I'm sure.
I remember Millie. Bellevue
Yeah.
Terrace. Where was Bellevue Terrace?
The red brick houses beside the Mazda garage on the Dublin Bridge.
Oh, I do know where you're on about. Yeah, I used to
Yeah.
walk up and down that road just because I didn't have a car at the time, so I knew quite a lot.
Yeah.
So, I lived in, because I was young. You live in different places and all sorts of stuff. So I lived in different ends of Mullingar. Place I spent the longest in was beside the office. Was, you know, those, well, they were new at the time. They're like 30 years old now. They were right behind the Westmead Motors garage.
Yeah. There's
What's it called?
Bellevue.
Bellevue. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
Bellevue, isn't it?
Yeah, where I live now, like I was in Dublin myself, and my wife were in Dublin for the last 12, 13 years, and
Yeah.
moved home, and now we live just up the road from Westmead Motors, basically. Hello, Ali, I presume, is it?
Yeah. Hi, Jason. Hi,
Hey,
Eddie.
how are
What's
you?
going on?
Hey, Ali, how are you?
Very fine, thanks. Jason, is my audio coming through okay?
Oh, it sounds perfect. Yeah, that's the most
Great.
professional closed-in setup I've ever seen in my life. It's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, compared to
I did, when I was between jobs, I did some freelance voiceover work. I actually got started in it because friends and I won a top 10 spot in an iHeartRadio contest for
No way.
podcasting. Yeah, we did a scripted podcast about Mozart. And so we got a grant, we got a really fancy microphone, and we did a quick like self crash course on Google about like audio setup. So like, yeah, I'm in my closet, but I wanted you to have like good quality audio for this. And this is like the deadest space in my house. So
and where are you originally from, Dallas then, Ali? Or
yeah, so my family's from a little bit of all over. My dad's from Ohio, my mom's from Michigan. I was born in Florida, but grew up in Texas.
Wow.
And the reason I give you like that whole
Yeah.
convoluted thing is because Dallas isn't a very transient city. A lot of people who are in Texas are from Texas, and they've been from Texas forever. So it's like I grew up in Texas, but I'm not one of these like 7 generations back people.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, so I haven't been to Texas. I've been to about half the American states, but Texas
Oh,
isn't
cool.
one of them that it's not one that I've been to, unfortunately. Ohio, I think I have. Florida, I definitely have. Michigan, no, I don't think so. I think that's one that's on my list. So I've got a few years that are definitely on the list anyway. So, and what's the the GAA club. How did you get involved in that? Or
So I got involved shortly after graduating from undergrad. I went to the University of Texas at Austin, and I worked at the sponsor bar for the Celtic Cowboys, the Austin club.
okay,
When I
Hiss. By the way,
what?
he's already
I
given
said
out about you.
hiss. There are men
Oh
rivals.
yeah.
They're the
Boo
parish
hiss.
rivals.
Yeah.
They're the local parish. They're
Okay.
200 miles away, but they're the local parish.
No. So anyway, when I moved back to Dallas, where I grew up, friends had moved to different places. It was just kind of like getting to know the city all over again, and I needed to meet some new people. I was teaching primary school music at the time, so it was
Awesome,
like
yeah.
either people I had known since I was 8 or they were 8. So I needed to get out and meet new people, and so the guys in Austin were like, "Yeah, here's the information for Dallas. Go play football. You'll love it." I didn't even own cleats at the time. I did marching band and martial arts before I played Gaelic. Never really a team sports person. Not that I had anything against it. It just wasn't for me as a kid.
Yeah.
I went to one training, fell in love, bought cleats the next day, and I've been coming to training pretty regularly ever since.
That's amazing. Yeah, I should.
That was like 7 years ago now.
I've got a lot of American clubs on, and I've had to get a couple of them just to explain the word scrimmage, because I was like, unless anybody over here watches NFL, they're not going to know what we're talking about. And then, so cleats, then for anyone who hasn't a clue, is football boots essentially.
Boots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For some of our American recruits, at least like when we're out in a pub and at the night out after the game or whatever, we kind of have to do the reverse when they're like, Gaelic football, what is that? And Elaine, no, not Aileen.
Yeah, Elaine
Thank
O'Connor.
you, Elaine O'Connor. She, when I first played football,
Another
she was living in Dallas.
Roscommon woman.
Oh God.
She described it as like soccer and rugby had a baby, and I loved that, but it didn't seem to go quite far enough because of the round shape of the ball. So I would always add, it's like soccer and rugby had a baby, but somebody had an affair with volleyball. And if nothing else, that at least gets us a laugh and usually a Facebook like, because they have to go look it up and see what it is.
That might be a good tagline for this podcast, yeah, because the hurling one, the most we've used most so far is like Jason Statham in that film where he just goes, it's a cross between murder and hockey. So
yeah, that's good.
That's a good one.
I'll use that for Gaelic football. So yeah,
I like for hurling, it's like baseball and lacrosse had a baby, but somebody had an affair with field hockey.
Field hockey, okay. I was wondering. I was like, what other sport is left? Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. Yeah, I definitely use that one. Eddie, you said a Roscommon woman. Does that mean you're from Roscommon or?
Oh yeah, I'm from Roscommon. Yeah.
Oh, I'm surprised y'all hadn't already talked about that. When I hopped on, you were talking about all the.
So Addie, I used to live. Jason's from Mullingar, so I lived in Mullingar for 4 years. That's where I was trained as an accountant. So I did my apprenticeship, if you will, and
gotcha. Okay.
His stomping grounds. So that's what we were talking about when you came.
Gotcha.
Whereabouts in Roscommon are you from?
I'm from Atleague, but my mother lives in Roscommon Town now. It's in the area around Roscommon Town.
Oh yeah, sure. No,
it's right on the Galway-Roscommon border. So Atleague, so we have big rivalries there. So both my parents are actually Galway, but they are still both at League. Or my father's no longer with us, but they're both still at League because they just moved the other side of the parish. So my father always used to say, "We're blow-ins over here." So if we didn't get our place on it, if we didn't get our place on a team growing up, it was because we were blow-ins and Galway people.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, and how the hell did you get from Atleague to Dallas? Via Mullingar.
Good question. Oh yeah, bloody hell, yeah. Mullingar's got a lot to answer for. So I worked as an accountant. So I ended up after I finished with Kinnears with Grant Thornton, you qualify as an accountant, and then you go, as the fellow says, you kind of have your training finished. So I ended up going with KPMG originally. In London. So I worked in London for a few years, and I ended up moving with them a few times. And I ended up in New York with them, but I have a brother who ended up in Dallas randomly. And I used to go down and visit him. Between one thing and another, I ended up marrying a girl from here. We went back to Ireland. We were back in Ireland for 7 years. So we were in Dublin, and we decided we'd move back 11 years ago. So that's how I ended up in Dallas. So it's really my brother because
you look like a man who's far too young.
Fault.
Yeah, you're far too young of a man looking to be traveling around that much. 7 years here and 11 years there.
Stop. Yeah, well, that's the way it is.
Early 30s, I would say, at a push.
Oh, thank you, Jason. See,
Definitely, yeah. There's a very
Ali, there's a lot we
look,
can
yeah.
learn from this man. There's a lot we can learn from
Clearly.
this man.
Yeah,
Clearly.
definitely. Yeah. Irish people tend to look very young, anyway, isn't that the case? So
Yeah.
generally,
Yeah.
yeah. And
I was young. I was younger before I went out last night. I can tell you that. I'm not feeling the best.
I think everyone says that after being out. So
Yeah. So
So-
it's a holiday weekend here. Jason.
Memorial weekend, isn't it?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a bank holiday today. So
we should probably at some point talk about the Dubliner and the role that it played.
Yeah,
in
go for it, yeah.
definitely. Well,
But are they your main Irish kind of sponsors?
yeah. Well, Ali, I'm
sort
not
of.
too sure this year. They've always been there for us. There's been a
Yeah.
bunch of Irish pubs that have been there for us. So
Yeah, like the Irish pub scene is surprisingly good in Dallas. You don't really think of Dallas as this like Irish
No.
mecca or anything like
Yeah.
that, but we've got a very solid pub scene with a really tight knit community. It's looking like Laughlin's is going to be our like more sort of main title sponsor, but there's some crossover in ownership between the Dubliner and Laughlin, so it's like the same community of people, if you will.
Yeah.
And I would also put our St. Patrick's Day celebration up against anywhere else in the United States. I lived in Boston for 2 years. I saw a Boston St. Patrick's Day celebration. And let me tell you, I like Dallas's better. That one year it was 17 Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it was wicked
No, I don't
cold,
know.
just too cold.
Yeah.
Covers were too expensive and drinks were too expensive. We had sunshine in Dallas. It was like, I'm going to say like in the upper 20s Celsius. I can do
Okay.
that conversion a little bit
Yep,
faster,
that's
but then when
okay.
we get into like below freezing stuff,
Yeah.
it's just gone.
it's actually perfect time of the year for us, isn't
It
it?
really is.
Because
And then,
it's before we get hot and it's after
Mhm.
we get cold.
Okay.
So it's
and
like,
there's a strong patio culture here as well. So you're just outside. The covers aren't terribly expensive. I mean, there are some covers, but it's not too bad. And the drink
Hmm.
prices aren't raised that much. So
Okay.
you can still like definitely
Yeah.
go out on a budget,
Yeah.
which is
I
nice.
need to get the Boston guys on to tell them their Paddy's Day is shit, basically.
Oh, they know. I told,
Okay.
I like
Oh, good.
I will like I played with the Shamrocks up there. They're
Yeah.
a lovely club. Absolutely love the Boston Shamrocks.
St. Patrick's Day, though.
Well,
Yeah.
like the local GAA wasn't involved in the parade at
Oh,
all.
that's no good. Yeah, that's
and
no good.
and there wasn't like any sort of group celebration. So the next year I was like, even though I'm still in grad school, I was like, nope, I'm sick of this New England spring. It's chilly and I miss sunshine. I'm going to Texas for St. Patrick's Day. It's fine.
They're too focused on the Patriots, I presume, are they?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, that would be a
So
big problem.
it's interesting. St. Patrick's Day parade here. I think it's one of the largest in the country. Is that right, Ali? It's like over
that wouldn't
100
surprise me. I don't
it's
have
over
the
100,000 people actually come physically and watch it.
I don't have
Jesus
the data
Christ.
for it, but that really wouldn't surprise me. At least the year that I saw Boston's parade, ours felt bigger, both from a point of people lining the streets and a point of like physical size of the floats. Like we'll get some like double decker floats here in Dallas because people get creative. And
Yeah, it's surprisingly bigger. There isn't as big a Irish diaspora or roots here, but people just love the St. Patrick's Day parade. To a point a few years ago, there's been a lot of issues around because one of the things that they've done here for the last few years, literally just up the road from me, is, and it's actually Peter Kinney in the Dubliner, that area. There's an area, a block of bars on Greenville, and it's a good street, right? And
it's great.
they block off the whole street for St. Patrick's Day. And literally no cars, and the police, they get permission obviously to do this, and there's something like 10,000 people go to that party, and it's literally a block. They call it a block party. And but the last few years, because there's been so much, it's a bit messy, a lot of drinking, as you can imagine, and a lot of families and stuff in this area. Like I said, it's literally at the head of my road. People have been kind of giving out about it, and people tried to get it banned.
Oh no, I didn't realize this.
Yeah, they did. And then there was a whole thing that the sponsors didn't come in because it's heavily sponsored. 100,000 people. It's a lot of people. It has to get a lot of money. And in the end, the one who actually saved it, and he was the marshal 2 years ago, the last parade we had, because obviously we didn't have it the last 2 years, was Mark Cuban. I don't know, do you know Mark Cuban? He's a billionaire Texas guy, but he's famous for owning the Dallas Mavericks.
No way.
And he was the equivalent of, what's the show in Ireland? It's called Sharks over here. What's it called?
It's Shark Tank over here. It's
The Apprentice or something, or Dragon's Den.
Dragon's Den.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think Australia's got one as well.
Yeah, he's like, there's a lot of people talking about him. There's talk about him going for president after Donald Trump.
Oh, Lord.
Anything's possible. And
Yeah.
he's starting to be on political shows now. So he's a he's one of these larger than life characters. But in fairness, I'll give him one thing. He saved the St. Patrick's Day parade because he literally just wrote a check and made it happen.
Do you think he would play in midfield for,
He's actually a big guy. He's famous as well for the Dallas Mavericks for getting into rows with referees. Even though he's on the bench.
He's a very involved sports owner, and he's like not only like with his team but with the community as well. So as far as like larger than life billionaire sports team owner personalities go, he's certainly better than Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. Like I'll take Mark Cuban any day.
Well, if he's starting rows with referees, he sounds like a man who's made for the GAA because what you need to do. You need someone like him.
Actually,
when this episode drops, we'll tag him on Twitter.
Yeah, definitely.
I never thought about that, Ali. He actually would be a good man to get involved. And we actually, surprisingly, it's a small community here, even in the business world. You'd be amazed how quickly you can get to these people.
6 degrees separation is probably quite quick in Dallas.
It's probably tighter in Dallas. It's weird.
Okay. So it's like Mullingar then.
It is. You may not believe this, Jason, but one thing I found from Dallas, because I came here and I knew no one. And literally people said, nothing happens here as regards jobs or business that is online or whatever. Yeah, it's similar to Ireland. You have to get out there and just start talking shite.
Talk shite to people. That's right. Yeah, talk shite to people.
Yeah. So that's exactly. Dallas is a talk shite city. Probably.
Eddie, I have a question for you. So you came to Dallas and you didn't know anybody, and I know that you were one of the people that like helped found the club. So can you talk us through that kind of journey of like coming to Dallas? Not really, because whenever I've moved to a new city, whether that's Boston or DC or wherever, the first thing I do is reach out to the local GAA because I didn't know anybody in those experiences. So
I'm going to give lots of names here to the people that really. I was the one that actually took the baton as much as things. So the actual founders of the club, and this is probably most people don't even know this, what the club was. And so I came here in July 2020, 2010. And the guy, it actually, in fairness, we talk about Austin, they're our main rivals, but the main reason we exist is Austin and Pat Dubb. I don't know, he as regards your podcast, Pat would be a really good guy for you to get on, because Pat is Mr. GAA, I think, in America this stage. And he's still, like, Pat's 45-ish, he's or 40-ish, so he's still relatively young, according to me, So.
he's also very active in, like, not only the Texas GAA but the Southwest GAA as well. Reach out to him. I'm sure he'd be happy to be on.
Yeah, and I don't even know does he have official positions at this stage, but if I wanted something done in Austin, I'd pick up the phone to Pat, such and such. Yeah. He's one of those guys. He's a really good guy. So Pat actually, so they had a club down in Austin and they had started to get going a bit and they started to get a bit better. And Kevin McCann, who was one of our guys here, Kevin he's from Tyrone. He's a lunatic Tyrone man. In fact, mad into his football. And he was in his 20s and he wanted to play a bit of ball. So he reached out to the Austin guys. So he started playing football with Austin, even though it's 300 miles away. I know it seems weird, but that's what you have to do. And just through that Pat asked Kevin, he says, Jesus Christ, it'd be great if we had another club in Dallas or you know what I mean, even for a challenge game. Is there any way you could get a challenge? Because we're playing the Nationals in a few months' time. It'd be great to have a few challenge games, even if there wasn't that, whatever. So literally McCann decided, he started ringing around everybody, and we didn't have near enough Irish people, and that's why our probably club is a little bit more diverse than most clubs. We just don't have the numbers. And he started reaching out to Aussies, Irish, over 50s, under 20s. It just was a myriad to get 15 players on the field. And actually, it's funny now. I saw somebody posted on Facebook, because it was 10 years ago last year, the first game of Fionn's MacCumhaill. Right. And I guarantee you, Ali wouldn't know hardly any of them. And most of them never played again after that. Wow. It was just... because there was Peter Holland, there was all these guys, and they're all local businessmen that happened to be Irish and they played football 30 years ago, so they were giving it talks. So we ended up having a challenge game. That was before me, and then they ended up, obviously Austin hockey does, but in fairness to the Austin guys, they took off all their players at halftime and stuff like that, as you do, right? And then we decided we'd have another challenge up here, and then it happened up here, and then I came over literally that month. And the whole idea was challenge games for Austin. And then that October, November, we kind of got together down in Austin. A few of us went down and kind of talked about doing something like Texas Championship sort of effort. And it's funny, Johnny Zimak, who you probably know, Ali.
Oh yeah, I love Johnny.
Johnny turns up at this thing. Johnny's like a lunatic. I love him, but he's a lunatic, right? He's a guy that literally will go to the moon and he'll end up being Neil Armstrong because he's daft enough to think he can be, right? He turns up at this meeting. He hugged the whole meeting. And there was no club in Houston. He didn't have any players. He didn't have any committee, but he was telling us all how to do it. You know, and that's Johnny. And it was
Houston's got a club now, though.
Yeah,
exactly. It's because of him, because you know what I mean. And so it's that's how we ended up getting together, and very much from the start. Oh, sorry, I missed one thing. We did go to nationals with Austin the first year, and we scraped a team together to go to nationals a year after that, and we teamed up with Austin in the hurling. Right. So weirdly enough, I'm from the Galway.
Oh my God, we actually did hurling things.
Oh,
Jason, our club is not a hurling club. I mean, we would love to grow to be a hurling club. We just haven't been able to generate the interest in the same way we have for football.
But the reality was, Austin wasn't either. It's just we both had football teams, and Pat Tubb says to me, he says, would you have a few hurlers? We want to put in a hurling team. Because most of their guys were hurlers that just were from, they were very much Cork, Limerick guys.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I actually played for a Scammon back in the day. I meant to swing a hurl. So it's all good. And then I got 2 or 3 others. So there was about 5 of us from Dallas. And that was enough to get a squad of 16.
Yeah.
And it's funny, to just give you an idea of the levels of it. My brother Brian is 55 or 6 now. So that's 10 years ago. So he's 45, 46. So he was playing. And yet on the same team, we had Adrian Mannix, who a year later was on the Cork panel in Ireland.
Right.
So we had a diversity of talent
to do that. I worked. Well, I didn't work. I met Adrian on a summer that he and some friends were on a J1 while I was working at the pub. I didn't know he went on to play hurling at such a high level. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, but Adrian, when he played, like, by the way, we were playing Junior B in North America, so you can imagine he was pretty good. And
what a ringer.
It's funny, over the course of the weekend, I got pretty handy myself. I got the old, the old knack back. And we had another guy, his best friend, Sherman O'Connor, who had also played intermediate.
Sherman, I love Sherman.
So these were, you remember these guys?
Yeah. No, it was Adrian, Sherman, and I think the other guy's name was Mark. And the 3 of them came over at the same summer. Mark wasn't a footballer.
Mark
in fact,
went. He wasn't there. He didn't go to nationals. He must have left before that.
Possibly. I remember I went on a study abroad to England after that summer, and so I hopped over to Ireland and I went to visit them, and Sherman and Adrian were playing a game, but Mark wasn't. So Mark took my friend and me to go watch this match, and then we went to this like little cul-de-sac of pubs afterwards, and it was just the first time I ever had a hot whiskey. It was just such a great experience overall. It was really great to see this, like, the sport played at a high level, but also in such a community space.
That's amazing.
I think Mannix, so to give you an idea how good Mannix was from, or he still is, he's still down in Austin, by the way, but he was a top underage player in Cork, and he played for a junior club, I think, or intermediate, but they ended up winning the intermediate championship, but they were literally flying him back from Austin.
Wow.
So he was a decent player. And he ended up in the Cork panel. He stayed at home and he ended up in the Cork panel. He played Cork, he played National Hurling League. He never played championship with them, but he ended up, he's a good guy, in fairness. He enjoys the fun. He was never he was never willing to make the sacrifices, but he was a serious hurler.
That's amazing. Yeah, you feel like
So we won the Junior B Championship in North America, and even out of that, it actually was really good because it bonded the clubs a lot together.
Yeah,
and out of that came the Texas Championship, and out of that, then we have this. It's funny. Then it grew to a rivalry at a point. They were way better than us, and then suddenly we got a bunch of guys in at a time. John Widge, MacCumhaill, they all came at the same time. I'd like to give you an idea. MacCumhaill, Michael's sports. He's a PhD in sports science, and he's over here. He works with elite sports leagues. So he's actually on the books of Donegal. He's actually their chief advisor in sports science for Donegal GAA now. Yeah, there's actually an article about him on the Independent. Now he's the best self-promoter ever. But he's a really good guy. But he's obviously very knowledgeable about sports. He coached Clare footballers under Mick O'Dwyer when Mick was last coaching.
Wow, Mick was...
And that was when he was in his early 20s. Now he's still only in his early 30s. But he's a good guy. But so we have these random people pop up.
Yeah.
And in fairness to Michael, Michael's been a huge driver of on the field stuff in the last 8 years. John Widgerly was another guy. John played for Cork for years, or in football. He's a guy that maybe played some championship, but mainly, and it was around the time that Cork won the All Ireland. So he's a top footballer. He's one of my best friends. He literally lives around the corner. He's so we were lucky enough to get those guys randomly dropped off a spaceship into us at a time when we needed somebody, and then suddenly a few of us who were in local businesses, we started recruiting J1 students.
Of course you did.
Yeah, but we did it, in fairness to us, we did it in a better way. It was never for the summer, it was for a whole year.
Okay, that's fair enough.
No, I do remember that. We very rarely, in my memory anyway, have had people come over for just the summer. It's always been minimum 6 months.
Oh, that's okay.
There's selfish reasons as well. If you're looking at business and you're trying to bring somebody over, I'm not going to have you over for 2 months.
Yeah, we want long term. Yeah. What's your numbers like today then as a club?
They're getting there. Yeah. So that was probably when the club was like at its height. And Eddie, I'd still love to hear a little bit more about the origin story of the women's side of it. I'm learning so much about the origin story of the men's club, and some of it I knew, but some of it I didn't. But as I was playing, when I first got started, that was like kind of right at the height of all of this when you guys won. It wasn't Junior C, it was Junior B championships, wasn't it?
Actually, it was Junior C, but then
it was Junior C. But
we played Junior A and Nationals now, and it's funny.
Well, no, like the last time it was in Boston. That was my first season.
It's funny. Junior C back then, they had all the teams in Junior C, and there's very few teams in Junior B and Junior A. They kind of made it more whatever. So now we're in Junior A, even though we never won Junior B. We got floated up there, and we ended up in the final of Junior B the last time we were national. So we're obviously decent enough.
Yeah.
But like we weren't recruiting in quite the same way. There were some more, some other sports leagues kind of popped up. Rugby was getting very popular. Aussie rules was getting popular. So there was just more, and not more limited resources to pull from, because Dallas is a big city. We just weren't seeming to tap into those recruiting options that some of those other sports were. So it was low there for a minute, and I was in Boston at the time, but it seemed like, just from keeping in touch with the club and everything, that the women's team kind of carried the club for numbers for a while. And that was even like before I went to grad school, we would have a co-ed training, and you'd have like almost twice as many women as men. And so we would do a co-ed training just to get everybody moving and practicing those motions and things. Now the shoe is kind of on the other foot. The men are doing like absolutely fantastic with numbers. They're getting people out. We've been able to collaborate with one of the Aussie rules clubs and bring their lads out to sort of help with numbers, and just kind of get, we'll go to their golf tournament, they'll come to our golf tournament, kind of that sort of a friendly relationship. But I'd say we're getting there. It's coming out of quarantine is really helping, as people are looking for stuff to do. They want to be outside. They want to be active. They don't necessarily want to go back to a traditional gym. So we've been able to get there, and thankfully we've always been able to field both clubs. Like, we've been able to register with the USGA with enough numbers for that. Now, have we always been able to get a team to travel somewhere? Travel's a little trickier, especially given the size of the US, even given the size of Texas.
It's huge.
But it's we still have a good core group of people consistently coming out. And that kind of goes to one of the reasons I like having a co-ed club, is that we can pull resources like that. If recruiting's down one year for one side, the training numbers are still up because you've got the other side, and vice versa. There's just a lot of support there, rather than trying to pull from the same resources of like sponsors and field space and things like that.
Yeah, in fairness, to follow on from what Ali said there about the numbers, um, again, you're on about the origins, Ali, of the women's club. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I'm going to give that one to. I actually never mentioned in the original club. Paddy Walsh was one of Paddy Walsh. Again, we were lucky. Paddy played football for Mayo back in their era before they started getting to the All Irelands, and he's one of the main reasons we have a club because again. He's one of these guys. He literally carried the whole because our team was a ragtag group, and he was literally an intercounty footballer. He was still only in his early 30s,
Yeah.
right? And he literally would go, and he's the most humble guy in the world. And he's like this guy. You do not think he's one of these guys that's ridiculously physically strong, but you don't see it until you get a shoulder from him.
And then you know all about it.
You know, he's 5'10", 5'11". He's not exactly heavy built. He's just strong. Wire, we call it back home.
Wiry, yeah.
Wiry, and not wiry as in 10. He's just strong
And
just very humble guy. But he was the main reason I'd say that we like McCann started it from just madness of starting a club, and then Paddy Walsh took the baton. And in fairness, then you kind of got grouped. Actually, the original, if I was going to say the 5 founders were Paddy Walsh, Brian, my brother Brian, who's like Mr. GAA. He rings the lads back home every week to tell them what's happening back home. He's been here 30 years. Obviously, Ali's laughing. She knows the story. But that's the way he is. He's just addicted to GAA. And then you had Davy Devlin, who's a Monaghan guy, who's an absolute lunatic. If you Google him, you'll get a load of stuff about him. He's married now to Hayley O'Sullivan. Or Hayley O'Devlin now. But he forced her to enter into the Rose of Tralee one year, right? And that's how actually we met you originally, Ali, right? Through the Rose.
I was Austin had, like I said, I was living and working in Austin at the time. They had encouraged me to go out for it. Nothing ever came of it, but it was still a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was about to ask. There's a story behind that somewhere.
Haley ended up basically not just winning the Texas Rose, which you usually don't do. You have to enter it in a bunch of years. Right. Usually it's whatever. But she ended up winning that. She went to Tralee. She won the whole bloody thing.
Oh, what's her name?
And she didn't. And as a friend of ours
at the time, it was Hayley O'Sullivan.
Okay.
Yeah, Hayley O'Sullivan, and literally one of the lads, Paul Devine, who sadly died since, he used to go on. Remember the year the Newcastle guy? He used to go on about the year Davy won the Rose because it wasn't about Hayley. And if you Google Hayley O'Sullivan, you'll see all these pictures of this mad Monaghan fella. You know.
Wow.
On the papers, but in any case, but he's very salesy. He's like Mr. Sales.
Yeah.
So, but again, great crack, great friend of ours. But he was instrumental at a certain point because he went into the bars to all our English friends and started on to them about the Gaelic football and all this. And like Paul Devine, he got Paul involved. And once you get Paul, you get all the English lads. So by the way, our team, we've had a lot of English lads over the years.
Yeah, it sounds like
We've had a lot of the English lads, and it's like yesterday. The reason that I have a sore head this morning is because I was up with English lads yesterday because I play soccer with those guys. So it's kind of an English-Irish community. We don't have that division. There isn't enough of them to cause trouble and not enough of us. So we kind of together. But Carl Pigg played a few years ago, and Carl was really good. Ali Bradshaw was one of our best players, and he was a guy that was on the books of Blackburn Rovers back in the day. So a brilliant soccer player. So
let's look up all these names later.
Yeah, you get guys like that along the way. But the reason the women started, so Paddy Walsh started the thing, and we started training that year. I remember it was that year that there was 100 days over 100 degrees. Do you remember that, Ali?
Yeah. That was a wild summer.
It was the hottest summer ever in Texas, which says something, right? It was brutally, and yet we went out 3 days a week in the evenings, and it's literally 100 degrees in the evenings. And when I say 100, like 40 degrees centigrade, it kills you. But by God, you get fit in it. I remember going to nationals that year, and we brought water. We didn't use it because we were going like, what do we need water for? It's not even close to.
Where was the nationals that year?
It was San Francisco. So it's very mild.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that one.
Like everybody else is guzzling water, and we're there like, I don't feel like I need to drink water anymore because you're
getting hot.
Exactly, it's weird. But in any case, so Paddy and I started doing that, and then Maria Reardon, who's back now, right?
Oh, Maria, okay.
Yeah, I met Maria Reardon. So we met Maria playing soccer at some league, and told her about the Gaelic football. She came back down in the Gaelic, and Maria was dating Dee at the time, I think.
Yeah. No, I this is where my knowledge of the story kind of comes up. But
Okay.
it's more on the gossip than the football.
Yeah. Well, you know, France, we're a very diverse community over here,
Yeah.
Jason. And we've all sorts of, we're very woke, aren't we, Ali? But
So we try our best.
you know, I guess, but we're all carrying weapons as well, so we swing every way over
Yeah.
here politically. But in any case, Maria had played football in Dublin in ladies football, and she came out training with us, and she's good, like. And
Yeah,
in
she is.
fairness to her, she brought, because she was dating D. Next thing, D is mad into CrossFit. These two girls from Down, two twins. And like they're 50 now, right, Ellie? They gotta be.
They must be, but you
gotta
would
be
never
50.
know it. They're so fit.
Okay.
They're so fit, like they're ripped.
Yeah.
They're like training 6 days
Yeah.
a week or 9 days a week. I don't know, whatever. But in any case, so that's how Dee got involved, and then Dee brought
Noreen.
No,
Yeah.
and then suddenly out of that grew a women's club.
Oh, I love
Oh.
that. I
It's
love that
weird.
so much.
It just happened again because of Maria just happened to turn up at a soccer game one day.
Yeah.
And she had played Gaelic, and we said, "Oh yeah, come down," because we're mad for numbers,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, men, women. So we've grown the club, and it's funny. You were saying the other day, Ali, that most clubs back home there's a whole movement now to unite women's and men's football. There was a bit of a scandal last year with the Galway women, was it?
That's right,
Turning up
yeah.
to the game.
Yeah.
And a lot of the problem is it's so political because the women want to be
Yeah.
independent from the men. Even that may make sense in Dublin, it does not make sense at league.
Yeah.
Because we've
Yeah,
barely enough to
it-
have one pitch.
It
Yeah.
kind of made sense in Boston because there were. So I auditioned for grad school. I got my master's in music education and arts administration from the Boston Conservatory at
Nice.
Berkeley. So when I say I auditioned, I mean like that was just the set of hoops that I had to go through. I
Yeah.
played French horn and da. So when I auditioned, I knew I had Boston in mind. I knew I was like looking to move there. So I immediately looked up the GAA, and there were 3 clubs at the time of my audition. But then by the time I got my acceptance letter and I was ready to move, one of those clubs had folded due to financial issues.
Okay.
And so then there were 2 women's clubs. I couldn't tell you how many men's clubs there were, but it just blew my mind that there were only 2 women's clubs, no camogie, and then all of these other separate independence men's clubs. And the way somebody explained it to me was that, you know, this way we weren't necessarily tied to one club for sponsors. We talk about like golf tournaments and, you know, trivia night fundraiser things. By having a women's club not associated with a men's club, we could invite all of the men's teams and not have to worry about it. So that like sort of made sense to me, but it was still just a little mind blowing because every other interaction I had with an American club was co-ed.
Yeah. I have to ask, because I
Texas
just
were too spread out.
Yeah, well, I think of it, it's crossed my mind just you were talking about the club foundations. The name Fionn MacCumhaill is quite unique in a GA term. Is there anything behind that?
So again, I'm gonna throw another name at you here, Ali.
Yeah, go on.
There was actually an effort from a bunch of American guys. Jason, you know Jason Harris, Ali?
Oh yeah.
So Jason and a group of guys, and there was a guy Larkin from Dublin that I didn't know. I just had heard about him, and they tried to set
Not
up
Philly
a
Larkin,
club.
right?
Well, no,
not Philly?
in my.
Okay.
He hasn't been around in my time, so he's
okay.
around in your time. I couldn't even tell you what his last name was. Brian and those guys know.
Sure.
But they tried to set up a club, and they were all Glasgow Celtic supporters. That was their common bond. So I'm trying to think, did they have a game? They may have had one game and it just folded. I think just the wrong people, wrong time sort of thing. But they were all computer guys, and they had websites and stuff like this long before any clubs had websites. Yeah. We had probably the most technologically savvy club that didn't have any players ever.
Nice.
And in fairness, again, I'll go to Paddy Walsh. Paddy Walsh is Mr. Practical. He's totally humble. He didn't try and put a Mayo stamp on this club. He kind of went, we need a website. Okay. And he started Googling, and he went, there's already a club in Dallas. And then he went, no, that club folded. Hey, they've already got a website. We're going to take it, and we're going to call our name. We're going to call ourselves Finn MacCumhaill, because that's just
Brilliant.
the easiest path to the next step. That's how we became Finn MacCumhaill.
That is brilliant.
I had no idea. I thought it had something to do with like the mythology and the legend. And like,
exactly.
I'm sure it did originally, but you'd have to ask Jason Harris why did they pick Finn MacCumhaill, because we picked it because it was there and there was already a website.
We already had the domain. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was getting. I was like, is there a history part to it? Yeah.
And I suppose one of the other things is it was convenient because, you know, in Ireland, because in hindsight, I'm going to say Paddy had thought about this, but he probably hadn't. But it was actually a good thing in the end, because we didn't call it Pádraig Pierce's or
Yeah.
name your Irish patriot. And in fairness, it didn't scare off the English people because it was Finn McCool's, you know?
Yeah.
So it was actually a good thing in that regard. And even America at that time, you know, I was coming out in 9/11. It was still only 10 years after 9/11. The whole thing, the whole Irish patriot thing was probably passed. So
Okay, that's a good one.
and it's
Yeah.
funny. The Houston lads originally set their club up, and they were a more militant bunch originally, and they called it the Houston Fenians.
Oh man.
Right.
And I remember that Houston is, you know, in fairness to our club, we're largely, since I left the board, we're largely no drama club. We just run it, and Ali and Jason and those guys run a really good club. When I was there, it was more drama, but in Houston, we're in the 3rd division compared to Houston as regards drama, and they play it all out on Facebook. They have these arguments on Facebook. I've gone, oh my God. And they had a row over their name, the Houston Fenians, and they ended up changing it to the Houston Gales, and they had EGMs over that issue.
Wow.
What's
So
the
I'm going to
rivalry?
give Paddy Walsh more credit. He
Yeah.
saw all this coming, and he just went for the most benign name you could come across in Ireland. Finn
Paddy
McCool.
Walsh sounds like a hero. I have to ask as well, since you mentioned Austin, all them. I had Adrian from San Antonio on.
Adrian's a great guy.
Oh,
He's
nice.
a really great guy.
Yeah. Is there
Yeah.
much rivalry with them?
So it's funny with
Yeah,
San Antonio.
It feels like there's less drama between.
Okay.
It kind of. Eddie, sorry I interrupted you. It sometimes it has felt like the other clubs versus Austin sometimes.
Okay.
And I'll let Eddie get into some of the
there has been a
backstories.
bit of that, but I'll be honest, yeah. And you'll tell me about what it's like now, because it's a few years since I've been out of the mix and that. But Dove is still the first guy that I ring if there's an issue in any of the Texas clubs. I ring Dove offline and say, "What's the crack?" You know. I always really liked Adrian. So Adrian Brett's from Sligo, and Adrian. In fairness, Adrian's knees went in the end.
He said,
Adrian is a really good footballer, right? But he ended up in San Antonio. I don't even know. I'm trying to think, how did he end up down there? Was it a bank or something? I don't know randomly how he ended up down there. But he grew the club there. They have a really strong Irish connection, stronger than any other of the Texas cities because of the Alamo. Did you know 14 of the people that died in the Alamo were from Ireland, born in Ireland?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, they have a section with like flags from honoring from where all the people were from.
Yeah, and there's only like 150 altogether, so it's a huge proportion are actually Irish-born people that died in the Alamo, and the Alamo is right in the center of San Antonio. That's how the city grew up, and also I think the San Patricios and all that. I think they kind of call themselves. So they have all these Irish ethnic cultural groups down there, and apparently there's a lot of politics around it down there because it's probably more Boston than Dallas, because we don't have any of this baggage. But their club kind of grew out of that, but Adrian was the link to football. And I think since Adrian left, they've always had a lot of people involved. They've been much better at getting Americans than us.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But by the same token, they've never been competitive.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If we sent out there was times we sent out our second team and we'd hockey them.
Okay.
They've never, and particularly since Adrian would literally take us on his own, like Paddy Walsh used to against us. So it's a little bit like that. And they've never really, the very few Irish people in San Antonio. And San Antonio is right beside Austin. They're neighboring cities.
It's about an hour apart from one another via car.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Austin's considered a really trendy city. It's a good nightlife and all that. And any of the Irish kids that come over here or whatever, students, they all go to Austin.
Okay. So that's funny, because I actually, the reason I thought of him was I randomly had a missed call from him earlier, and I was like, that's very random. And I actually thought he was coming to like give me some dirt on you guys and like ask him this, ask him this. But no, he wasn't. He lost his phone and he was rigging like last numbers or something on it. So I was wondering. I was like,
no, he's a really good guy. And then the guys at first we get on well, but all the clubs get on pretty well in fairness. Like I said,
I would say
probably more drama in Austin. Austin are always the best players. Houston have the most drama. Ourselves in San Antonio, I suppose we have our own bit of drama. It's just
there's definitely a different flavor of it on the women's side. For more than a hot second, there was some bad blood between the Austin women and the Dallas women. And that's mostly because it was like siblings who would get sick of each other for a real long time. Like most of the years that I've been playing, Austin and Dallas were the only women's club within a 10-hour drive. The next closest women's team was in Denver, Colorado. So no matter where we went or what we did, no matter where we went or what we did, we would always see each other. So we just got so sick of it. We would even go to a tournament in Denver or the national tournament or trying to find games somewhere else. Because at least at the start of when I was starting to play, each of the 4 cities in Texas would take a turn hosting. So the guys weren't playing the same teams back to back. So like Houston would play Dallas one week, but then Dallas would play San Antonio and Houston would play Austin. So there was like a cycle through it. But no matter what city we were in, no matter where we went, the Dallas and Austin women always saw each other. And so I can tell you so many times at nationals, we would get so fed up because like we came all this way to do this thing and we're just playing the same time. So not the nationals in San Francisco that Eddie was referring to, but there was another one more recently where it was like one of the hottest Labor Day weekends on record for San Francisco. And we still had to play Austin. And we were like, oh my God, if we wanted to play Austin in 97-degree heat, we would have just stayed home. But thankfully that's starting to dissipate. Like new fresh blood is coming in on both sides. And so I'm really thankful that we're starting to kind of put that behind, but it was really just like a lack of women's clubs. I remember both of the clubs were so excited the day Austin and San Antonio announced they were going to try and get a women's club going. And they're getting there. They're still registering as like a combined team for a lot of things, but like, hey, we'll take it. Both Austin and Dallas were just like, what can we do to support this? We're so excited for just fresh blood.
I think one of the other problems with that too, Ali, and was that they're trying to force so that the Southwest Division Southwest.
Now we're gonna get into national drama, and I'm here for it.
The Southwest Division, geographically, we stretch from Louisiana through to Southern California. It's a continent, right?
Only a small area.
We're considered like a county or a sub-county. It's like the Mid-South region of Roscommon, where you have fucking 20 clubs within 10 miles, right? And sometimes I feel that some people up in Boston are making decisions that are just not. They don't
so
realize
used to New England. Like and not only in New England, but like everybody comes out to this beautiful facility in Canton where they host the nationals, but they've got like 5 pitches or whatever, and everybody from every club, from all like 15 of the men's clubs and the 2 ladies clubs, will come out to this field and play it all at the same time. And it's all right here in Canton, Massachusetts, about like 45 minutes south of Boston. And it's all right there. So I don't think they truly realize that like, no, Dallas and Austin are 3 hours apart.
Small town mentality.
In New England, you can you can drive through 5 states in 3 hours. And in Texas, you're driving for 5 and you're still in the same.
I know. And then Ali, add to that the fact that the amount of Irish people in Massachusetts compared to Texas is just like you're a more densely populated area. Like New York, I lived in New York for a few years. The same idea. I knew very few Irish people in New York because it's kind of, why would I? Because they're everywhere. It's like being in Ireland. You don't go your way to meet Irish people in Ireland. They're just there. They happen. But my point is, everything is close. Everything is like I used to be annoyed of going. I never actually played in New York, but I went up to a few games back in the day, and I'd be going, oh my God, this is like 45 minutes on a subway. I never leave Manhattan. This is ridiculous. This better be a right good game. And then you go from that to it's taken 2 days to basically play a game against Austin because you have to stay overnight and stuff like that. You literally have to think about staying overnight to any game. Yeah,
it's pretty tough. It's not like here, you could drive like Dublin are playing Donegal, in the league final. I know it'll be over by the time this goes out, but like they were having a neutral venue because they said we didn't want them to travel too far. Like, whereas like a lot of people in college used to drive home to Donegal on the weekends and back to Dublin after. Like, so it's pretty short. Yeah.
I gotta say, I had this isn't a football experience, but this is just like an Irish Texas experience. So I had that study abroad in London, and because I had worked at the pub before my study abroad started, I actually flew into Dublin to visit friends beforehand that I had met working at the pub. my accommodations in Dublin fell through, but my friend was like, hey, come to Galway. Like stuff fell through in Dublin, but like come to Galway. It's great crack. Like we'll have the best time. Just come to Galway. So he gives me information to get on the bus from the airport in Dublin to Galway. Jason, it blew my mind that I was from literally one side of the country to the other in less time than it took me to get from my apartment in Austin for college to my parents' house, like with a stop, for lunch, less time. I was like, oh my God, I'm on the other side of the country. And I'd still be
it's
in
like
Texas
that
right
now.
This
Yeah.
is
Like,
wild.
and even the roads, like if I don't know how many years ago that was, but like you can literally go Dublin to Galway now with the last set of traffic lights you hit are on the edge of Dublin, and you can go across the country without stopping the car, basically. So like
all of that to bring back into the Southwest Division, spanning from Louisiana, which is just east of Texas, all the way to the West Coast.
that's like a 3-week
space.
road trip.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes, it is.
But so largely Southwest was considered a developing area, which we still are. Like
I would say that's accurate because there's, the clubs are dotted so far apart, mostly in major cities.
And the thing is, I guess they've seen like Austin in particular. Austin have literally won intermediate football and intermediate hurling. They've never went senior in nationals, but they're literally the best at the rest of the country. They're probably the best. Or I would say Austin over the last 4 or 5 years, they're probably the best club. That's a proper club, not a by Jeremy Connolly in sort of club. So the thing. Do you know what I mean? And I don't mean that with the.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
They're majority homegrown players.
It doesn't make any sense to me how you can build an organization based on bringing over players to get Ali D'Amico and Eddie Gershie get dropped in the summer then because it doesn't make any sense. I don't know how it helps anything.
It's been going on for forever though. Like I had the guys from Jersey Shore on, and
nice.
Pat was on, and Pat is like originally Donegal man, but he told me about playing back in the 60s in New York, and he said the Derry New York team they were playing them in the final, and they someone got word that they brought over this fella to play with them, and they rang Pat and they said, Pat, look, you're gonna have to take this fella, apparently he's handy enough. And Pat was like, okay, no problem. So Pat rocked up, and Pat was marking Pat Spillane. So like the icon of the GAA at the time.
I know. One of those players.
Yeah. Pat punched him in the side of the head to start the game, and Pat Spillane disappeared, and that was the end of it. So
yeah, I don't know. Have you ever been in Roscommon? There's a bar called Down the Hatch.
I've been to Roscommon. I try and blank it out when I go there. Though.
All right. Down the Hatch is it's owned by 2 guys. One of the guys is Seamus Hayden. So Seamus Hayden was midfield for Roscommon for a decade at the time when Roscommon were in the 1980 All Ireland final. So he's one of the top midfielders in the country. Nicest guy you could ever meet. And anytime I'd be home, my mother's house now is right beside it, so I'd go in there for a few pints. And Tuesday nights we just talk GAA and stuff. And he'd be, obviously, because I'm in America, he'd be telling me all the stories. He literally, and this is in the middle. This is when Roscommon were league champions. They won 3 or 4 in a row, Connachts and whatever. In the middle of all of that, he used to go over different weekends if he didn't have a game to New York or Philadelphia. Pick your place. He used to play for different clubs, different weekends. They'd fly him over. Christ. And it's like, how does that make any sense to anybody? It made sense to him.
I mean, no wonder
24 years of age.
No wonder that third ladies club in Boston went under financially, because that's what would happen. Not to the same extent as it would on the men, but the Shamrocks as an organization had like a house that they would rent for the summer for the girls. They would try and get them hooked up with like summer jobs and things like that. There wasn't as much in terms of like stipend or actually like flying over, because we didn't have that kind of money, but there was that same idea of like, we're going to bring in all of these other players. So it's interesting with the pandemic and everything that's happened and sort of the lack of ability to travel internationally like that. It'll be interesting to see what some of those clubs look like at the national tournament this year. I would say from experience, if the Shamrocks and the other club, whose name escapes me at the moment, want to combine, I think they would have enough homegrown players between them to field an excellent team.
Okay.
But that's 2 clubs with some homegrown
Yeah.
people versus like
Yeah,
two clubs.
it probably will be
against
interesting
each other.
actually as to about that because the senior division in nationals, and to give you an idea of even the nationals as regards Boston and Chicago, really the clubs there, all they care about is Boston and Chicago. They'll send a team to nationals or they may not. The last time I was in nationals, whether it was 2 years ago, was that Virginia, Ali?
Yeah, it was Virginia. I missed that one because I was registered with the Shamrocks, but they lost to the other clubs. So they didn't get to go. So I was like,
and that was the year that Jim McConnelly left the Dublin panel and he ended up over in Boston.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was the Blues he played with up there, Boston Blues, or
honestly, I don't know. I didn't know a lot of the men's team. There wasn't a lot of co-ed social events. So I didn't know a lot of the men's clubs when I was up there.
So in any case, they whatever team he was with won the championship. Surprise. But I mean, this is one of the best footballers probably ever in Gaelic football, and he's peak fitness. He wasn't like he was 45.
Yeah, get him on for the podcast.
Yeah, he was pretty good. Yeah, he was pretty good. But they didn't even send a team to nationals that year.
And I do remember this drama. Yeah.
And they did, and nobody and in fairness, I was looking forward to seeing Jeremy Connolly in that setting. I love the game and whatever, and it's great to be able to see a player of that magnitude in a lower level, just to see how good he really is. He's probably, it's great to see these. I remember Paul Mannion a few years ago played in Chicago, and I've seen him, and we all went to see him. You just watch him, just watch it. That was before Paul Mannion was Paul Mannion. Actually, he was more known as a soccer player, I think, than he was a Gaelic player. But it's great to see. But and I don't blame. By the way, I don't blame Jim McConnelly for this at all. But the club never even sent a team. But they didn't care because the fine is $2,500. So Jason was asking me the other day about, we have these decisions to make every year. Do we even enter a team in nationals? Because if we don't enter a team, they'll fine us $2,500, which is an existential crisis for a club like us.
Yeah. For most of the clubs in the Southwest, honestly, not all of them, but for most of the clubs in the Southwest, that fine is something really big to take into consideration.
Yeah. That could, any club in the world, that's a lot of money.
That could sink a club.
But it's to me the Boston clubs. You're either in North America or you're not. So if you're going to bring the German Conleys over, you should make sure that they're there at nationals. But they don't care because it's their local whatever measuring contest.
It's their local rivalries.
That's a pity. Yeah, you think that. I didn't realize that because the only pictures and news we really got over here that, well, at the time I didn't really listen to it too much, but it was just the Irmans in Boston, and they won, and that was about the height of it. It wasn't front page news in some ways over here, so.
Yeah, it was just front page news that he was actually there. Yeah. But and he won the championship the Sunday beforehand. And the Boston ones always run right up to nationals. So they in their defense, they don't know who the champions are until the week before nationals.
Okay. Yeah, which
now,
is
granted,
wonky
it was
scheduling.
driving distance for them though. It's in Virginia.
Yeah,
for
it's
us,
not that far away.
That's our local derby. They could have drove down. You know what I mean? Things like that just bug you a little bit.
Yeah.
Because
but
going back to Austin, I think if you stripped out all of that, I would say the last 5 years, Austin have won intermediate hurling, intermediate football. They've never went senior because you can't compete against the German Conleys.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, I think that's interesting you say that. I mean, it's interesting you say that because going back to that recent San Francisco finals, there was a women's club from one of the Carolinas. I can't remember which one, but they only had 2 Irish-born on their team, and they won the whole thing for ladies senior. But granted, they were very close to a college. I think they were really close to Duke, and so they had a lot of college athletes to be pulling from. But the way they just took to the game, so it's not impossible, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And do you remember your own debut, Ali, when you started out?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think we were junior C at the time. It was not it goes in cycles here about which city hosts the tournament. So Boston is coming up right now. It was the last time Boston hosted nationals. I loved the game. That was my first season with it. I don't remember that I had any super shining moments, but it was definitely a lot of fun. Like I said, not really having much of a team sports background, I kind of gravitated more towards the defender position because of that martial arts background. I'm I don't necessarily know what I'm doing with like kicking a ball or hand passing a ball. I don't know what to do with the ball, but I can get in your way.
Yeah, nothing wrong with martial arts and the GAA. I think they go hand in hand.
And
sometimes.
you're not going to. There's. I don't know if I don't know.
Ali will take you out if you get by her. God,
I will. I will. There was one game. This was in the last time San Francisco played. My person and I were both going for a ball. I was playing right wing back at the time, and we were both going for the ball. She went to the ground trying to get the ball and like batted it away. So the ball went out to other place somewhere. I turn around to go follow the ball, only to look down and find that she's grabbed my ankle. So without even really thinking about it, I just kind of like pop her on the head and like run back towards the ball. But because the ref was over by the ball, only the sidelines saw it. So it like, I mean, on the one hand, was it the most appropriate response? Probably not. But at the same time, don't grab my ankle.
Did you tell that story at your Rosa Shirley audition though?
Oh, this was years after after I had aged out of Rosa Trulli stuff.
You really should go for the Rosa Trulli again and just be there to tell that story, because the whole country will be right behind you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm too old. It's fine.
Oh, you'd be fine. You'd win it with that kind of story easily. You'd win it on that story alone. Yeah.
Well, and then I also have a good story that I wasn't able to tell until after I had aged out. Really, or well, no. I just think I wasn't involved in the competition that year. But Eddie, I think you'll appreciate the story because it involves Brian.
All right.
So I had just started working at the pub. I was still fairly new. I was working the door. So I would say like, hi, welcome to Fido. Can I see your ID? And at the end of the night, I'd say, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Can I swear on this podcast?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great.
It'll be edited later, right?
No, it won't. Not at all.
Anyway. So this was like one night, a couple months into when I was working, before the bartenders had bothered to learn my name because there was such high turnover in the door staff usually. And the Austin Club had just hosted a game. And so I was outside, so I didn't really see any of the things going on inside. But apparently Brian and this other guy were served way too close to last call. 2:00 rolls around. And that's when like me and my team, there were 3 people on door that night. Go around and start like collecting drinks and started like gently shooing people out because there's a hard out at 2:15. Otherwise, like the TABC, the Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission, will like fine you or shut you down or do things. It's a hard out at 2:15.
Okay.
And so I see these guys with their beers. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. Let me go empty the trash. Let me go get some beers from the regulars. Let me do some other things. My colleagues, on the other hand, decide to start getting into it with these lads, being like, you got to go, man. You got to go drink up. Finally, all I hear is like, you want my beer? You can fucking have it. So somebody chugs. It was Brian. Brian chugs his Guinness, slams it down on the glass, on the bar, broke the glass, cut his hand. I'm thinking, oh no, what fresh hell do I have to deal with now? I take a deep breath. I get like the broom and dustpan. I get my teacher voice on, and Jason, you can appreciate this as a teacher. And I'm like, everybody get out. And like, but like way louder than that. I didn't want to like blow out the sound.
Yeah.
And the other guy is like, come on, man, we gotta go. And that was also like the first time the bartenders learned my name, because like nobody expected this like stern teacher voice saying like, get the hell out, I'm done in the night. So fast forward a couple years later, it's my first season with Dallas. Jason and I have started dating. We're going down to the Austin tournament. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to go to the Austin tournament. I love the sponsor pub. I used to work there. This bar, like just going on and on about this bar. He's like, oh, this bar. Let me tell you about this bar. And I start to hear the story from the other side. And this is how I learned that they got served way too close to last call. And I was like, we're on the middle of nowhere down I-35. And I'm like, wait. Is this what happened next with this big loud voice? He's like, oh my God, yes. And he's like, that was us.
You. You were on the other side of that. I never knew that.
Yeah. So technically the first time we ever met, I kicked his ass out of a bar.
That is brilliant. I love that.
We won't tell Brian.
Oh, well, until he finds out on this, if he listens to it, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Enough time has passed. It's water under the bridge. I'm sure Brian wouldn't mind.
It's all good.
Besides, I wasn't the one trying to take his Guinness away. That was my colleague.
But to give you an idea, Jason, about just to follow on from that, is it has been definitely at the start. It was great fun actually going on a trip to Austin, because we'd have the night out, we'd rent the hotels or get the hotel rooms and everything. It was good fun. But it's hard to build a whole championship on it as well, because after a while you're doing it every week, every few months. It gets harder. So
Yeah.
it's a huge challenge for us all.
Well, I think we'll come back a little bit now that the pandemic's over. Everybody's been so cooped up for so long.
Yeah,
that I think everybody's gonna be ready to get out.
Yeah, I even see. I went down to the training the other day, and we have a load of guys in this year. And again, it's just random. For us, we don't really recruit players. They just randomly. There's a guy from Galway, and an Irish company, and they've set up a branch here, and he's started to recruit guys from Ireland because of what he does.
Yeah,
and plus he's a proper GAA man. He knows the right thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's always good. Yeah,
part of the interview is related to Gaelic football skills.
Yeah, that's always a good thing to have. Yeah, in your interviews.
Exactly. Yeah, but in reality, we have a good few players this year, but it's random, and we've always struggled. I think our women's team have done a better job of, because its roots was more American based. I think it's been better recruiting players. We have struggled over the years to get American guys to play. We have a few stalwarts, Jason being one, Gabe, but there's an awful lot. Now Drew came back this year, and Drew's one of these guys.
Goodness, Drew came back.
Yeah, certain people are just really good athletes, and they're good learners, and they get it straight away. And this guy Drew just came to us. I don't even know how he came to us. His wife plays with us. She's really good in the women's team.
Yeah, no, his wife has been a constant with the women's team, but Drew took a break to actually go play rugby for a little bit.
And the reason we lost Drew was not because Drew fell out with us; it's because we didn't have games, and I get it. Yeah. So he played a rugby game, and rugby's big here. Or it's bigger.
There's like 3 clubs that have pretty consistent play amongst each other.
They're constantly playing games, and that's just within Dallas. They've also clubs in Austin. You know what I mean? So they have a proper league. So he wanted games. He's a big, strong lad. He's in his 20s. Is he in his 20s still? Ali, he's just about.
Oh, that's a good question.
He's at his physical peak.
He's super fit. They're like he and his wife are probably somewhere between 28 and 32. That's my guess.
It sounds pretty impressive, yeah.
She's super fit as well. She can outrun just about anybody.
Yeah.
But he's back this year, which is great, because it's great. It's horrible, but we seem to have lost Vernell now. And it's funny, Vernell, just to give you an idea of Vernell's dad was a Hall of Fame NBA player with the Dallas Mavericks.
Who is he?
And he had played professional basketball. And in fairness, you want to see him as a physical specimen. He's got a pair of arms that can go from one end of the room to the other. And you're playing midfield.
He can palm a size 5.
Yeah, he's a ridiculous hand.
One of my favorite moments.
Ronald Blackman.
They
retired his jersey in the Mavericks.
Wow. Okay.
I didn't know they retired his dad's jersey. That's awesome. One of my favorite moments of seeing just Vernell as an all-around athlete. I was in grad school, so I was in Boston at the time. My club didn't make it to finals, and I don't think the women came to finals that year either. But this was the year it was in Philly. The men came down for Philly, so I was like, screw it, I miss my Jason. I'm gonna rent a car and drive down. It's gonna be great. And so I was able to live stream the men's games and things like that. And so Vernell is very tall, super tall, and
6'8". Sorry, I'm gonna throw in a line here. Our midfield last year, we had Aidan Quinn, or 2 years ago, I forget about last year. Aidan Quinn and Vernell Blackman, right? I think one of them was 6'8", and the other is 6'7". That was our midfield. It's funny.
Wild.
Aidan's father's from Derry. He played inter-county for Derry way back when. He's still a big man.
Yeah.
I took a photograph of the two of them. They asked me to take a photograph. I still have it to this day. Aidan makes Kieran look like a dwarf.
His son is very tall.
Big Aidan is, and he's physically fit. He can run as well.
Yeah.
My God, he's a big man.
Played with us up until he had to go off and go to college. And
get
knowledge.
I think he's going to be back. I was talking to him last week. Yeah, I think he's going to be back. But
he went to a city that doesn't have a football club, so he's still.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. He's yours for now, anyway. Definitely. Yeah. That's he sounds like an interesting guy as well.
Yeah. They both are. So Vernell they were playing Boston Galway, their Boston Galway men, and so that they're not a very tall team. Nothing against them. I mean, they're not short, but they're not 6'8" tall. And so there's this guy who's at least 2 heads shorter than him, trying to guard him. And then Vernell gets the ball and he just takes off like a gazelle. And he does this weird, basketball around the body thing with the ball. And the Boston Galway guy guarding him just bends over double and starts laughing. Cause he was just what am I supposed to do with this? How am I
can't-
supposed to guard this?
You can't defend against that kind of player, in fairness. That's that's pretty unique. Yeah. The other couple of questions then I have to ask, Eddie, maybe you've been the Irishman. Have you introduced the Texas community to Father Ted?
Some of them here and there. It's on Netflix now.
Yeah,
it's on Netflix now. I thought it was just on Apple TV.
It was on. Well, it was on Netflix. I can't guarantee you, but it was on there.
I'll have to go.
Yeah,
go check.
I have thrown a few of them out to people.
Good. That's the main thing. Yeah, and Ali, I have to ask you as well. Have you been given like an adopted Irish county to follow?
Not really. Through ancestry or researching my like genealogy and ancestry with my mom, D'Amico is a very Italian last name, so I've always kind of like, and my dad is like fully Italian American. I mean, it goes generations back, but like
you should be following
Italian.
the Rossies then.
Well, no, so I'm getting there. When my mom's side is where the Irish side comes in.
Okay.
My mom's half Irish, I'm a quarter, but it comes in a couple different ways. My grandmother's father was from Tyrone, and my grandfather's mother is from Belfast. So
neither them are any use. You want to get a better area than that.
Go down to Roscommon.
I mean, my point is I have a soft spot for some of the northern counties was my point.
Yeah, blanket defense will be coming into Dallas football now soon enough as well. So,
but go ahead, Eddie. I was just gonna say I don't know. I like everybody. I don't really.
Westmeath is the team you want to follow. Don't listen to Eddie whatever he says. Yeah.
There you go. So Jason, it's interesting. The Rossies. Everybody calls the Roscommon the Rossies, right?
Yeah.
That actually came from not because of derivative, because Paddy Joe Burke, our local barber, coined that phrase in the early 80s because of Paolo Rossi from Italy. Do you remember?
Yeah, the footballer,
soccer player. And he started calling us the Rossies, and everybody went in, every self-respecting GA man went in there to get his hair cut. And that's how it came. He started on about Paolo Rossi, and then it became the Rossies. That's how we became the Rossies.
Is that a true story?
Yeah, it's actually a true story. And first, he's kind of become a minor celebrity in GA lore back in Ireland now.
Right,
that's really cute.
I have to remember that one. Jesus
that.
Christ, that's amazing.
Google Paddy Joe Burke, you'll see it.
I will. I've definitely got to Google him after. Yeah.
Staying on Roscommon for a minute and like reasons to like Roscommon from a football perspective. I absolutely love Chris O'Dowd
apart from that.
I love that he also played for Roscommon, and then Moon Boy is just absolutely
Brilliant.
Delightful. Speaking of like Irish shows, like Moon Boy is just a joy to watch.
I'll have you know, Ali, that's North Roscommon. That's not
Boyle.
You know what?
That's
what?
That's Boyle.
It's Roscommon.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Fair
enough. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Clearly I don't know what I'm talking about, so I'm going to shut up.
Fine. Yeah, no, it's all right.
I'm only joking.
If you have any links to Chris O'Dowd, Eddie, and go on to get him on the podcast, I'd love to get him on if you know anyone who knows anyone. So.
I actually don't. I know lads that played with him back in the days when he played football, but I don't know has anybody kept in contact with him.
We'll find someone who has. That'd be great.
Yeah, he'd be a great one to get. But to give you an idea, actually, one thing about our club, we've always had a healthy amount of people coming here that have donned the GA jersey, the Finn McCool's jersey. So we've had over the years, Desi Farrell has togged for Finn McCool's.
Really?
Michael Dignan has put on a jersey.
I'll have to tap to message him after. Bernard Flynn's my neighbour.
All right.
He lives around the corner.
Tell Bernard you're talking to me.
Right.
I still keep in contact. He's been over here a few times. DJ Carey came over here.
Right.
And we played it. So we a few years back, we did this weird thing whereby is a Davy Devlin escapade. We tried to, myself and Davy met Desi Farrell in Dublin way back, or in Dublin, in New York, 10 years ago. We kind of got on well with him, whatever. It was when we were starting the club and we're all big into ideas then. So I said to him, any chance you could get us the All-Stars? Because he was over the GPA. And he goes, no, but would you be interested in the Railway Cup? And the Railway Cup was dying on its feet. So we entered into this 1 year thing whereby we tried to get the Railway Cup to Dallas. So if you go on YouTube, you'll see videos. We have promotional videos for the Railway Cup in Dallas. So as a result of that, Desi arranged different people to come over promoting the whole idea. We actually raised a lot of sponsorship, but we didn't get enough. Okay. The GAA wouldn't put any money into it themselves at all. We had to basically come up with all the money.
Wow.
And you can imagine it was going to cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
But in any case, as part of that, Davy actually knew somebody in Autism Ireland, and there was a guy here who put a load of money into Autism Ireland as a result of that. And because the Railway Cup, then Michael Dignan and Bernard Flynn's from Mullingar. Well, the head of Autism Ireland lived in Mullingar.
I know him, yeah. Yeah, Kevin, I know him. I used to teach in
nice
autism unit. Yeah, I know him well, yeah.
So Davy knows him well through his sister is a really top woman in the autism thing in Ireland.
Yeah, they're amazing.
And as a result of that, he brought Michael Dignan and Bernard Flynn are best friends.
Yeah.
And the two of them come over, they're wild characters, good characters. And then and I don't know how DJ Carey ended up coming, but then through the American Ireland Fund, because that all got involved. DJ has been over here a bunch of times, and Desi comes over. Desi has been over a fair amount. Like we did this virtual thing this year where me and Davey actually hosted, and Desi came on and did a presentation because now
cute.
As I said to him, now you're big time, Desi. We need to use you.
Oh, brilliant! Jeez, there's so many things.
He's a total gentleman. He's a real good guy. So we've had a bit of fun over here with guys coming over because we're the only ones in town. Like,
yeah,
we're the only organization, and kind of all the Irish organizations work together here because we have to.
Yeah.
Generally, in most cities in America, they're in rivals and everybody's hates each other. But here, we don't even have that option.
I love it. Yeah, that's brilliant. I've so many. You've surprised me. So many things to look up after I leave.
I'm excited about you talking. You've got some of the other Texas clubs already on the docket. Like I know in that group message on Instagram that you have, the San Antonio club is in there, and isn't Houston in there? Have you reached out to
there's a couple of last questions if you don't mind me throwing them at you. They're kind of the stupid ones. Every club has tried them, and they're kind of designed, I suppose, for Dallas/Ireland. So there's some of them, Ali, you might be able to jump in with, and then Eddie will have to do a few as well. So I'm going to go with the first one, Ali, or no, Eddie, I'll go with you first. So you can choose between the Dallas Texan himself, Stone Cold Steve Austin, or you can go with Diarmuid Murtagh, the Roscommon hero. Or you might want to go with Seamus Hayden now instead, maybe.
Oh, that's obviously Seamus Hayden.
I'll take
that. Like who would win in a fight? Is that?
Just in general, they're just stupid questions. Yeah, that you can just pick from. The next one, Eddie, I might have to ask you as well. Some of these are very Irish, Ali. I have to apologize, but
that's fine.
Eddie, you can choose between Texan man Willie Nelson or GAA legend Willie Joe Padden.
Oh, jeez, I'd probably go for Willie Nelson on that one. Willie Joe was our nemesis for years.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Ali, I'll ask you this one because you've experience in Ireland, so you might be familiar with these guys. The Dixie Chicks, who I believe are from Texas, or the Coors, who are Ireland's great, minus the lunatic guy.
Dixie Chicks. Yeah, they've had some interesting politics, but I'm not familiar enough with the Coors music to fairly answer that.
Yeah, Jim Corr would actually fit in very well in Texas. His political views would probably come right down in the middle of Texas.
Yeah, that's going to be my tagline for this podcast. Dallas, Fionn, MacCumhaill, GAA. Jim Corr would fit in well. For Ali, if you don't know Jim Corr, he's a lunatic, essentially. He's a good musician, but he's a lunatic.
So just before you go, what's the history of the podcast and how did you end up doing this loaf of bread even?
Yeah. Well, you can YouTube then if you want after, since I'm going YouTube in half of the world. Paddy O'Shea's speech in 2004 to the Westmeath team. Famous speech.
No, I saw that. I listened to that in your like little 7-minute trailer. I thought that was very well. That gives a really good idea of what your podcast is.
Yeah. So it's part history as well because I've just written 2 history books for primary schools here, which have just been released as well. So I'm a big history nerd. Thanks. I'm a big history nerd, big sports nerd. So there's a way of combining the two because there's so many GAA podcasts here now. They're anywhere and everywhere, but they all do the same thing. It's all talk about the games, debate, controversy, change the rules. And I'm like, I love all that, but I don't really want to do that. So I want to try and bring the memories back and bring the fun times and all that. So it's kind of a way of doing it. And then the GAA Global one just came about from the travel and just seeing so much abroad and just like, they really need some sort of publicity. Like let someone tell them the world they exist. Like, so like I told some of the guys around here, that like I got a jersey from Suzhou Aero Og in China, and they were like, "Where the fuck is that?" And I was like, "They've a really good GAA club out there, and like these are the kind of things that I'm just trying to get across. Really, I suppose that's kind of actually speaking of jerseys as well. The last thing I always ask is, can people, because obviously a lot of Irish people love a random GAA jersey no more than myself. Is there anywhere that can be bought
your jersey?
Yeah, on the O'Neill stores,
O'Neill's.
actually.
O'Neill's.
When you go to the different clubs, you can
Yep.
type in Dallas or Finn McCool, FIONN capital
Yep.
C.
Yeah. Testing your spelling here.
Yeah, I know exactly. That's why I'm
UMH.
referring on to my
UMH.
Thank you.
Yeah.
ALL.
ALL,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Follow at Dallas GAA on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We're probably most active on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. I'm Instagram. Yeah, my Facebook is kind of just there to have. In some ways, I don't use it too much. So
We have some people who are super attached to the Facebook,
Yeah.
and then some people who are all about the Instagram. And we have Twitter just because you kind of have to.
yeah, always the way. I'm the
But it's
same.
there.
I'm exactly the same. Yes. The last thing I have to ask you then, is there anyone, Ali, you want to give a shout out to before you go when this eventually airs?
I would like to give a shout out to TJ Jensen. She's our registrar, and I gotta say, she has been like a big part of the heart and soul in keeping the logistics moving forward, making sure everybody's registered, meets those deadlines. It's what keeps us a club, is because she keeps us on track with all of that sort of stuff. American born, I think she's just like
Nice.
a really great example of how this sport that started in one place can go to these different places and create solid community throughout. So like, big shout out to TJ.
Awesome. Love it. Yeah. And Eddie, is there anyone back in Hat League or the Galway board or Roscommon board or wherever you want?
Well, seeing that we're on the Finn McCool trend, obviously Paddy Walsh, he's currently in Galway, our founding father.
Brilliant. I have to
He's a
find
little
out
man.
Paddy Walsh. Whereabouts in Galway is he? Do you know?
So his wife's he ended up over here because his wife did. She's a dentist, and I'll tell you a great story actually. So, his wife's she's a character, Briga Howley, and she's from Galway. But she came over here. She was already a dentist in Ireland, but she came over here to do pediatric dentists.
Okay.
Actually, we've had a bunch of people that came over here. There's the Baylor School of Dentistry is one of the best dentist schools in the world, apparently, and they have a specialist program for pediatric dentistry. Which, in fairness, I don't know about you, but in my days, we didn't want to go to the dentist. They were mine to actually have a specialist area that dealt with kids' teeth. But it's become more of a thing now. People are minding their teeth in Ireland. And she went back, and I think she was the only pediatric dentist in Galway, last I heard. There may be more now, but she's a great woman in fairness. But yeah, that's where they are. But a great story, a GAA story. So Paddy was obviously carried our club on the back, on the field and off the field.
Yeah.
And we're in San Francisco, the very first nationals we went. And of course, my brother Brian, he's hovering around and he's chatting to anybody who will talk GAA. He's like a kid in a candy store, as they say in America. And Brian strikes up a conversation with Joe McDonough. Do you remember? He's sadly deceased now. So Joe was the ex-president of the GAA. So Brian started talking to him because our club at home, Joe McDonough, opened the field. And our club at home is like our hurling club, right? Because we come from the hurling area. It's literally a club that was like, it's funny. I seem to follow these clubs that we have no members yet. It's a really strong club. But it's never had, almost every year is fielding a team is a struggle.
Yeah.
It's the same in Dallas. So I seem to go with that model. But in any case, Joe McDonough came down and opened the field. And it was a weird time. Our president, who was a president of the county board in Roscommon, there was an old rambling house. And you don't see them anymore, but you know what I'm on about.
Yeah.
You got people just walking off the street and go to this house. And it was like two bachelors and a spinster's brothers and sister living together. They're all dead now. But of course, Joe McDonough remembered it. He says, that was the best weekend of my life. You know, he did all those openings forever into this house because they're all of the people are dead now, but they're completely mad. It's great fun, like, in fairness. But in any case, so he remembered it all, and then whatever it was, Joe McDonough over the weekend, he was kind of striking up a friendship. Anytime anything happened, Brian, he would be calling over Brian, to the extent that when we won our Junior B championship with all of our Cork stars, he called out, "Jeez, it's amazing to come over here. I remember these lads in Traman and Roscommon," you know, like putting Roscommon and hurling in the same sentence. So he kind of did. But in the middle of it all, Brian introduces Joe McDonough to Paddy, and Paddy's very humble. And said, "Oh yeah, he played for Mayo," and "Oh yeah." And of course, Paddy wouldn't even want to talk about it. And then Briga, and she's going, "Oh yeah, oh Joe McDonough, sure, Galway man, like myself and whatever." And she goes, and Briga, and your man says, "Is by any chance is it Briga Howley?" And Davy is our Briggs. How the hell do you know my name? He was a teacher in Galway, and he says the only person he ever heard of, he used to teach with her mother, and it's the only time he ever came across the name Briga, because it's a Swedish name.
Never heard of it.
You never come across it. So it's so funny. Of course, she hadn't a clue who he was. She was allergic to GAA. She was only there for the weekend.
That is brilliant.
Jason, thank you so much for having us on your podcast.
Thank you.
It was so lovely. Thank you for having us on. Thank you for choosing to feature Dallas Finn McCool on the podcast. We'll be definitely
I'll keep in touch.
Posting about it after recording and promoting it when the episode airs.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on, guys. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Really have a good day,
talk
everyone.
to you guys soon. Yeah, take it easy. Bye-bye.
Coming up the next day on the Loaf of Bread GAA Global, we cut into our next slice.
So we got the kit from O'Neill's. You know, most of the guys didn't know what O'Neill's was, and went up to play Dallas. And you know, they just heard we were putting a team together, and they didn't really know, you know, what that would look like. So, you know, they put out their B team. Some of their lady players were playing with them too, and I think they expected a mismatch.
Yeah.
And we turned up with this brand new O'Neill's kit, and then I had to convince all the local guys to put on the short shorts. And that was, you know, it's a basketball city here, so they're used to it's
the knee length.
It's like as you'd say, Catholic school here. The shorts have below the knee. And you're putting these things in, and you'd swear you're asking them to put on a pair of Speedos.
I say a big thanks to Ali and Eddie, and make my way to the next destination. And coming up on Thursday next on the Loaf of Bread GAA podcast, my next slice is a local one. Slice 28 brings us across the state and keeps the rivalry in Texas going, as we meet former Sligo football star Adrian Brett and find out all about San Antonio GAA. I find out all about his own Sligo career, the life at San Antonio, the rivalries at the other Texas clubs, the USGAA, and much, much more. That's next Thursday from 9 AM as we continue the journey with 2 slices a week. I'll see you at the Arrivals Hall, but until then, check out the various clubs on the Instagram page and see all the amazing work they do and some of the nicest GAA gear going. Find the podcast on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on TikTok. Email loafofbreadpod@gmail.com, or just simply hit the follow button and spread the word of the Loaf of Bread GAA pod across the globe. Slánigi.